The red light above the camera blinks again as the studio re-enters. Live broadcast. The commercial break had only been 90 seconds, but behind the scenes it felt like a full-blown crisis management summit. Producers barked into earpieces. Network. Executives stared at monitors with clenched jaws. But Jasmine Crockett? She sat perfectly still. Her hands were folded, her eyes focused. Whatever was happening outside that studio, she had already decided she would not interrupt truth, because it made someone else uncomfortable. Traoré hadn't flinched once. He sat with his elbows on the table, fingers laced loosely, a strange calm surrounding him as if he knew the world would hear him, whether through broadcast or rumor or memory. The second half resumed quieter, but no less tense. The pundit who mocked Traoré earlier had been conveniently called off stage for another segment, but the audience remembered. The comment had struck deep not only because it was dismissive, but because it was familiar. A man stripped of his credibility, not through logic or facts, but because of where he was born. Traoré didn't revisit it directly. He didn't need to. His words had already cut wider than the insult itself. Jasmine cleared her throat and asked carefully, "Captain Traoré, some critics believe bringing you onto this show validates extremist rhetoric. How do you respond?" Her tone was diplomatic. Her eyes, though, held something else, an unspoken defiance of the question itself. She didn't write it. It came from upstairs. Traoré nodded once, then replied, "Truth is only radical when the lie is old and expensive." A beat. No music. No applause. Just stillness. Then he added, "America has always been more afraid of mirrors than weapons. You call me extreme because I remember too much." The words seemed to echo in the space. Jasmine didn't interrupt. For a few long seconds, she let the silence speak. The audience, too, was still unsure whether they were witnessing television or history. In the control room, a junior tech whispered, "He's trending already." His supervisor shushed him. Analytics could wait. Right now, every second was risk management. But outside the glass walls of the studio, phones were vibrating across the country. Hashtags were forming. Excerpts were clipped in real time. The message, powerful and unfiltered, had already escaped containment. Jasmine shifted slightly in her seat and moved to the next prepared question, but then stopped. She hesitated visibly, then folded the cue card in her lap. When she looked at Traoré again, there was no script in her voice. "Why now?" she asked quietly. "Why come here now?" He looked at her and replied, "Because it is not just your country bleeding. It is your memory. And memory, when manipulated, becomes a tool of oppression." Flashbulbs went off in the background. A staff photographer had captured the moment instinctively. Her camera lowered, hands shaking slightly. She didn't understand everything he said, but she felt it. In her gut, Jasmine asked him then, almost as a whisper, "Do you believe Black Americans are still colonized?" The question was direct, sharp, and risky. A few people behind the cameras leaned in. Traoré turned slightly toward her. "They are colonized in perception, in language, in expectation. You are free in geography, but not in narrative. You're permitted to rise, but not to rule. You're invited to the table as long as you don't ask who built the house." The studio didn't know whether to cut to commercial again. But the moment had passed, the spell already cast. He continued, "You are told to vote, but not to demand. You are told to speak, but only in tones that comfort the dominant ear. You are asked to forgive, but not to remember." Jasmine's hand trembled once. It was subtle, but the camera caught it. Not weakness, recognition, something in her shifted, a silent crack beneath layers of practiced professionalism. Then she said, "You know they'll come after you." He didn't blink. "They always do." And then, in a moment not planned, not rehearsed, and certainly not approved, Jasmine leaned slightly forward, elbows on the desk, mirroring his posture, and asked, "What's the real message, Captain?" "Not for them. For us." There was a pause, not for drama, but because he chose each word with weight. Then he looked directly into the lens and said, "You do not owe your oppressor comfort. You do not owe your ancestors silence. You do not owe your children assimilation. You owe them clarity. You owe them courage. You owe them truth even when it shakes your house down to its studs." A few audience members exhaled audibly, some with awe, some with fear, and somewhere in the upper tiers of the networks, Manhattan headquarters, someone slammed a boardroom table and demanded a legal review. Jasmine sat back, Her mind was racing, but her face gave nothing away. In her chest, though, something long buried: the buried anger, the quiet grief, the rationalizations made to survive in white-dominated spaces. It stirred. Cut to commercial. The control room didn't even argue this time. They needed a break. But before the screen faded, it held for a fraction of a second longer than usual on Traoré's face. Steady, calm, unapologetic. That night, millions would watch. Not just the broadcast, but the replays, the stitched clips, the remixed versions. Over trap beats, the stitched commentary videos, the high schoolers doing reaction videos. It spread not like news, but like prophecy. They didn't expect Jasmine to hold the line. They didn't expect Alonso, the young black producer who pushed for this booking, to leak internal emails afterward. They didn't expect that what they greenlit for ratings would morph into revolution. And most of all, they didn't expect a soldier to carry a mirror, because what was reflected in it was not a man in uniform. It was them, all of them. The liars, the watchers, the asleep, the obedient, the hopeful, and the complicit. And mirrors, once broken, don't stop cutting. In the days following the broadcast, the newsroom feels less like a studio and more like a pressure cooker. Conversations behind closed doors become hushed strategy sessions, not about truth, but about optics. Executives stare at spreadsheets, while simultaneously texting PR firms. Legal consultants are looped in. Nobody says it aloud, but everyone knows something got out they can't put back in. Traoré's words weren't just broadcast, they were detonated. And the fallout hasn't settled. Inside an editing bay, a segment producer quietly deletes. Rough footage of Traoré greeting the studio janitor with a handshake, not for malice, just for safety. He doesn't want to be associated. Fear, not facts, begins to shape decisions. But outside those glass offices, the country is already moving. We cut to Alonso again, sleepless and shaven, pacing the narrow hallway outside the control room. His phone buzzes non-stop. Black journalists from other networks message him in whispers. "Thank you. Be careful. They're going to come for you next." In the beginning, Alonso had believed he could change the machine from within. That's why he fought so hard to get Traoré on. Now, as he replays the internal arguments in his head, the excuses echo like satire. Too foreign, too radical. Our viewers won't relate. But what did they think? Viewers wanted comfort or clarity? His flashback deepens, the initial meeting where he pitched the idea. The stiff smiles. One white executive suggested instead bringing on a more American black voice, someone who understands our context. Alonso's jaw clenched. He replied, "Understanding the plantation doesn't require being born on it." Silence. A week later, reluctantly, they agreed. But they made him sign off personally on every liability clause. The unspoken warning was clear: you brought this in. You'll take the hit if it goes wrong. Simultaneously, we return to Jasmine. She's at her apartment, alone. Her laptop glows in the dark. On the screen are 100 tabs, angry think pieces, death threats, love letters, academic praise. Every opinion of her, dissected by strangers who know nothing of what it cost her to hold space for a man like Traoré in that studio. She replays the segment again, not to watch him, but to watch herself. How her body reacted before her words did. How her silence in key moments felt heavier than her questions. She recalls her law school years, where professors praised her poise while classmates mimicked her cadence in mock courtrooms. She remembers the time she was told to soften her image during a primetime segment because black women scare Midwestern viewers. The mask she wore so often had become part of her identity. Until that night, something cracked open. Outside of her, the country simmers. New micro-stories unfold, now connected in subtle ways to the original broadcast. A high school history. Teacher in Mississippi is reprimanded for playing the clip during a civil rights lecture. A student secretly records it and uploads the audio. The soundbite, "You are free in geography, but not in narrative," becomes a TikTok trend, voiced over footage of empty graduation halls, racial profiling videos, and historical archives. In a different city, a college protest breaks out. They don't chant slogans, they project Traoré's face across the front of the administration building. Their banner reads, "We are not asking." Back at the studio, a meeting is called. Jasmine is called in. 10 people sit across from her, not colleagues, but handlers. The air is rehearsed. A senior executive speaks first, gently. "We support you, truly. But this story, it's grown teeth. We need to reframe it. She listens. Another chimes in. What we're suggesting is simple: take the edge off. Guide the conversation toward community healing. Unity. She nods once, then says with perfect calm, unity without truth is just suppression with a better soundtrack. The room goes silent. Someone coughs. Someone else whispers, she's going rogue. She's not. She's returning. Meanwhile, outside the studio gates, the street is full. Protesters on both sides. Some wave American flags, chanting, "Deport Traoré." Others hold signs showing Malcolm X beside Traoré with a caption, "Same battle, different battlefield." The tension is growing. Not explosive yet, but heavy. A security guard tells Jasmine quietly, the walls are too thin for this much silence. Back in Traoré's hotel room, he's finishing a call with his aide. From Ouagadougou, he speaks in French, the subtitles translating his words. "No, I'm not worried. They fear me because I remember. But I'm not here to take, I'm here to return." He folds his uniform neatly on the bed. Not polished, not showy, just real. The kind of uniform worn by men who don't ask permission to exist. A knock at the door. It's Alonso. He steps in quietly, closes it behind him. They don't hug. They don't speak right away. Just sit across from each other in silence. Then Alonso says, "I think they're going to shut us down." Traoré nods. "Then you speak louder." Alonso's eyes narrow. "I could lose everything." Traoré stares through him and replies, "If you lose what makes you silent, you've gained what makes you free." As the pressure mounts, Jasmine prepares to re-enter the studio. The network is planning a new segment, this time with balanced voices, meaning diluted voices. She walks through the dressing room, past mirrors, past stylists offering touch-ups she waves off. She looks at herself, for once, not to adjust her image but to see what's underneath. In the reflection, she sees both the woman she's been and the one she buried to be accepted in spaces that only tolerated her presence. She breathes. The show goes live again. The energy is different, cautious, controlled. She opens with a standard preamble, but then pauses mid-sentence, looks down at her notes, then folds them again. This time not in protest but in decision. "I've been asked to offer balance," she says to the camera. But when the scale has been tilted for 400 years, balance begins with truth. Gasps. A technician glances nervously at the floor manager. Too late. The words are out. Traoré appears again on screen. Not in studio. A live feed from his hotel. He requested it that way. Jasmine agreed. His presence radiates calm again. But it's different now. He's no longer a guest. He's a mirror. And the country is still deciding whether to look away or confront what they see. As the segment progresses, a subtle war wages not just on screen, but off it. Emails flood in. Social media erupts. Other journalists from rival networks begin issuing statements, some condemning Jasmine, others quietly praising her. Inside her building, colleagues pass her without words, unsure whether to avoid her or align with her. At home, her mailbox is filled with both roses and threats, but something else begins. A shift. In Detroit, a small-town paper publishes an op-ed titled "The Courage of Being Unfiltered." In Baltimore, a public library sets up a screening night, Traoré Uncut. In Atlanta, a pastor quotes him during Sunday sermon. "Your chains became jewelry. Remove them." The congregation erupts. The network begins to crack. A junior researcher resigns publicly, citing the memo sent out warning staff to avoid divisive content. Someone leaks it. Screenshots go viral. Hashtags turn from support to scrutiny. And one by one, employees start walking out. Quietly, but clearly, the conflict deepens. The old power structure exposed. The new movement undefined but undeniable. And standing in the center of it all is Jasmine, no longer just a moderator, but a bridge between past and present, between truth and television, between silence and revolution. The question is no longer whether Traoré was too radical. The question now is, what are they willing to do to stop what he's started? Traoré walks off the set without a single word to the press. He doesn't need to. The streets speak for him now. Aerial shots reveal student walkouts, candlelight vigils, speeches in churches and town halls echoing his words. Jasmine sits backstage alone for a moment, shaken but not broken. A junior producer brings her a phone, dozens of missed calls, messages from civil rights leaders, fellow journalists, and strangers. "You didn't blink," one text reads. "We saw you." A low-budget community channel replays the interview on loop. Major networks try to distance themselves, calling it unapproved messaging, but the people know better. What happened wasn't planned. It was a rupture, and they felt it. Meanwhile, government institutions scramble. The Department of Justice announces a sudden audit into racial profiling claims. Local school boards are confronted by students quoting Jasmine's words. An old veteran sends a folded flag to Traoré's embassy with a letter, "I see you now. I see us." Traoré receives thousands of letters, not of fanfare, but of pain stories long silenced. He reads everyone. Some make him cry. Others he places in a notebook he now carries everywhere, a silent record of what America hides. Inside network headquarters, chaos reigns. Executives hold emergency meetings. Ratings skyrocket, but advertisers flee. "Control it," one executive shouts. But it's too late. Jasmine receives notice that her contract is suspended. No reason, no hearing, just a vague email about realignment. She shows up anyway, not to work, but to wait outside. Every day, a silent protest. Crowds grow around her. Her refusal becomes the headline. Students start live streaming from the sidewalk. Veterans bring her food. And then, on day 7, a retired civil rights leader joins her. "This is not your firing. This is your calling," he says. We flash to a university lecture. A professor plays the interview, pausing to explain Sankara's legacy, Malcolm's exile, the dangerous intimacy of historical erasure. One student raises a hand. "Why wasn't this taught before?" The professor only smiles. "It is now." Meanwhile, Jasmine is invited to a podcast with independent journalists. This time, she isn't scripted. She speaks freely about what she felt across from Traoré, not confrontation, but confrontation with herself. "He didn't insult me," she says. "He exposed a lie I didn't know I'd learned to live with." Traoré is seen boarding a flight back to Ouagadougou. He doesn't give interviews. He shakes hands with a janitor, a TSA officer, a crying grandmother who hugs him without words. At the gate, a child salutes him. He salutes back. As the plane lifts, the camera lingers. On the clouds, a voiceover from Jasmine. "He came here not to be understood, but to be remembered." Then violence. A hate group targets a small black church in Alabama with graffiti quoting twisted versions of Traoré's speech. They try to discredit him, lies about past military action, forged documents, edited clips. But a group of student coders releases a full, verified archive of his speech. Truth spreads faster than their lies. The internet becomes a war zone and a battleground for dignity. Jasmine gets doxxed. She doesn't hide. Instead, she posts a single sentence, "I'm still listening." Donations pour in. Volunteers offer to protect her. What began as a talk show becomes a national reckoning. Protests reach international embassies. Murals appear overnight, one of Jasmine and Traoré back-to-back under the words, "No throne without us." An old clip resurfaces of Fred Hampton. A child overlays Traoré's audio over it for a class project. It goes viral. School boards ban it. The internet immortalizes it. Jasmine's network tries one final smear. They leak her internal emails. But the public response isn't outrage, it's empathy. "We know why she had to write like that," a viral tweet reads. "Because y'all made her." Traoré lands in Burkina Faso to a silent crowd. No parade, just thousands standing in dignified stillness. He nods once and walks through them. In the capital, he meets with youth leaders. "You saw what happened," he tells them. "Now build what's next." The movement no longer belongs to one show or one woman or one soldier. It breathes in schools, protests, songs, letters, decisions. In a small classroom in Detroit, a teacher holds up a photo of Traoré and Jasmine. "Two people from two continents," she says, "who dared to be unscripted." A student raises her hand. "Can I be like them?" The teacher smiles. "You already are." Outside the studio where it all began, the original stage now sits abandoned. Tourists take selfies. But one day, a group of students arrives. They place flowers. They light candles. Not for mourning, but for memory. The door is locked, but their presence is louder than any broadcast. The camera pans to Jasmine standing a few steps behind, hand over her heart. Her eyes meet the lens. No speech, just truth, just presence. And then the screen fades to black, but the noise beyond it is only growing. It's days after the broadcast. The echo hasn't faded, it's grown louder. Protesters gather not in rage, but in reflection. Murals of Jasmine and Traoré appear in unlikely places: a school in Detroit, a bridge in Baton Rouge, a subway tunnel in Oakland. Each depicts their silence, their locked eyes, the moment everything turned. Networks struggle to reframe the segment. Fox claims it was staged. MSNBC replays it hourly, but the people don't care. They've stopped waiting for permission. Students form circles in classrooms to discuss identity. Churches open space for forums on justice. A public library names a new wing, the Room of Unfiltered Reckoning. In Burkina Faso, Traoré declines interviews. When pressed, he only says, "I said what needed to be said." Instead, he visits a school in Bobo Dioulasso, hands a boy a notebook. "Write what you see," he says, "not what they teach you to see." In the US, Jasmine has declined all media requests. She walks unnoticed into a small community clinic in Baltimore, where her cousin works, offers to help file medical forms. "You changed everything," the cousin says. Jasmine shakes her head. "We just reminded them what never changed." She looks tired but grounded, more herself than ever. Meanwhile, a quiet reckoning begins across media industries. A producer from the show, the one who initially objected to Traoré's invitation, resigns and posts a letter online. "I was trained to fear what couldn't be controlled. I'm unlearning that now." The letter goes viral. Universities call for Jasmine to speak, but she instead arranges for others, activists, midwives, wrongfully convicted fathers, to take the stage. "This isn't about a face," she insists, "it's about the mirror." One university in Georgia replaces a statue of a slave-owning founder with an abstract sculpture titled Inheritance Undone. The unveiling is attended by hundreds, including formerly incarcerated men holding candles. We see cuts of people in different time zones watching the now iconic clip, the moment Jasmine says, "We are no longer asking." In a mosque in Minneapolis, a Christian chapel in New Orleans, a Buddhist temple in Seattle, heads nod in silence. The footage is used in a language arts class in Tokyo. A high schooler in Karachi writes an essay titled, "When America Finally Listened to Africa." Jasmine, still anonymous in many places, visits an inner-city school in DC. A young boy runs up to her, asks if she's the woman on the screen. "Are you real?" he says. She kneels and hugs him. "I think we're all just becoming real." In a small CAF in Harlem, the once mock sound technician from the studio writes in a journal. He remembers the moment the camera refused to cut. "It felt like the camera saw truth," he writes. "I just didn't want to look away." Meanwhile, Jasmine's inbox fills with letters not just from America. One from a woman in Lagos, one from a boy in Bangladesh, a message from a Palestinian journalist. For once, someone told the truth and didn't die from it. Jasmine responds to each one, slowly, carefully, like building a house with her hands. Traoré releases a book not in English, not in French, but in more, his native tongue. It is untranslated, unapologetically local. They always translated our pain. Let them learn our joy instead. Despite pressure, he refuses a documentary deal. "It's not my face they need. It's their own courage." He begins construction on a cultural center for returning diaspora in Ouagadougou. The first wall is painted with a quote, "Your silence was not weakness, it was waiting for the right thunder." Back in the States, the former talk show set is dismantled. A photo leaks Jasmine alone on set before the lights were turned off. She's staring at Traoré's empty chair. The image becomes symbolic. A magazine prints it with the caption, "She didn't debate him, she received him." In a bold move, an award show adds a new category, Most Human Broadcast. They invite Jasmine. She doesn't attend. Instead, the stage plays a video of an elderly black woman reading from a handwritten note. "They told us to be quiet." Then one day, someone listened instead of silencing. That changed the sound of everything. The young girl who wrote to Jasmine, "It's okay to cry when truth comes," is now featured in a children's magazine. She says she wants to be a writer of truths. Her mother stands behind her, hand on shoulder. Jasmine keeps the letter folded in her wallet. Always. In quiet moments, she reads it like scripture. Once, while buying fruit in a local market, a vendor hands her change and says, "That thing you said, it fixed something I didn't know was broken." Jasmine thanks her, tears brimming again, but this time without shame. Months later, Traoré visits the US again privately, without cameras. He stops at a mural in Atlanta. Children are sketching it. He asks one boy what he's drawing. A man telling the truth, the boy replies. Did people believe him? Trao asks. The boy shrugs. Some did, some got scared. But my mum said it made her braver. Trao smiles, places a hand on the child's shoulder, then keeps walking. No speeches, no security, just presence. In a final sequence, Jasmine walks the same rooftop again where she once looked out in silence. This time, she's not alone. The camera pans, children, elders, artists, teachers all stand beside her. No fanfare, just presence. The city behind her is still flawed, still aching, but it's listening now. Somewhere, a small radio crackles. To life with the words, "You are not minorities. You are heirs." A grandmother leans closer to the speaker. Finally, she whispers, "Someone said it right." Fade to black.